Hi, I'm Richard Vague with Tychos. Today we want to take a quick look at the European Union. For centuries, there was a desire from those within Europe to somehow unify the continent. But until the 20th century, this had never advanced far. The last century brought added impetus in two key ways. First, the sheer size of the United States was creating any number of issues, especially around military power and trade leverage. By World War I, the U.S. economy had grown to the size as large as Britain, France, and Germany combined, a challenge to the leadership European countries had long taken for granted. In fact, the historian Adam Tooze showed that a fear of falling too far behind the U.S. was part of the German desire for Lebensraum that led to World War II. The second impetus stemmed from the fact that by 1945, France and Germany had been at war 3 times in less than 80 years, which brought a desire to somehow unite and bind them, and the European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC, the EU's predecessor, was founded in 1952 to coordinate those two countries around the production of coal and steel, two of the main materials of war. By 1958, that had evolved into the European Economic Community, and then by 1993 into the wider framework of the European Union, which now has 27 member countries and allows free movement of goods, capital, services, and people among them. But it has always been difficult to unify Europe in no small part due to geography. While the U.S. is a largely cohesive block of land, Europe is small blocks of contiguous land with an irregular assortment of peninsulas, including Spain, Italy, Greece, and Denmark, all more conducive to many separate countries rather than a single united one. As an offshore island, Britain has been even more disconnected. Further, whereas the U.S. has the world's best river system, with large rivers connecting its heartland and providing for the inexpensive long-distance movement of crops and other goods, Europe's main rivers are disconnected. And while the big U.S. mountain ranges tend to separate its coast from the heartland, Europe's do worse, further isolating the peninsulas of Spain, Italy, and Greece. Add to that the fact that countries aren't readily inclined to cede power to a central government, a bias most vividly evident in the case of Britain, which, as an isolated island, did not join the EU until 1973, never adopted the euro as its common currency, and departed the EU in 2020. But even if the EU were perfectly unified, it is still small economically compared to the US. The EU has a smaller landmass than the US, and as you can see here, it's not even as large or cohesive a landmass as the contiguous 48 states. U.S. GDP is 50% larger than Europe's on a currency exchange basis. And even though Europe has a larger population, its per capita GDP is half that of the U.S. The EU's population is slightly older, and its demographic trends are less favorable. Europe does have one key advantage. It has a consistent current account surplus, while the U.S. has a consistent deficit. Parts of Europe are manufacturing powerhouses, and it has the enduring tourist appeal of magnificent cities like London, Paris, and Rome. Maintaining this current account advantage is crucial to Europe's economic health moving forward. As an aside, China's GDP is now close to that of the EU in size, and on a purchasing power parity basis, it's already well ahead. But that's another story for another day. Has the EU been a success? Some would say yes, and claim the biggest achievement has been 70 years of peace within Europe, with the notable exceptions of the Yugoslav wars of the 1990s and the current crisis in Ukraine. It has provided its citizens the freedom to live, study, or work anywhere in the EU, and provided Europe with an added leverage in global trade negotiations. Some count the euro, the common currency itself, as a success. But in some sense, the jury is still out on the EU. Strong nationalists such as Charles de Gaulle in France and Margaret Thatcher in Britain were not supportive. And the common currency contributed to notable problems, as in the global financial crisis, when Greece could not address its severe trade imbalances through the traditional method of devaluation, since it didn't have a separate currency to devalue, a dilemma that significantly exacerbated its debt problems. And the EU now faces the rise of Euroscepticism, with right-wing nationalist parties blaming economic woes on their country's ties to the EU. That's it for this week. As always, please let us know in the comments what topics you're interested in hearing more about. Thanks.